Okay. Hi guys. Welcome to the Kenrald series. Um Kenrald Experience. Sorry, pardon me. Kenrald Experience, we our definite aim is uniting Africa, and on the platform we discuss a couple of series. I told you eventually we'll start interviewing wise people, but I thought during this quarantine period maybe I'll just open up my thinking about some of the issues that we'll be discussing in the course of the series, plus the others that will be arising as time goes on. So today I thought we'd talk about the significance of responsibility. Significance of responsibility. Responsibility is the third key principle of our SAR mentality, subsistence, which infinite thinking, infinite living, and responsibility all intertwined to create um, a sovereign individual. Because African unity and all future development of Africa is going to be based on having sovereign individual Africans. So, responsibility is often confused for rights. So, instead of human responsibility advocates and campaigns, we only see human rights campaigns. Oh, my rights have been abused. Oh, this leader is a bad leader. Oh, all hell is breaking loose. Oh, Africa. Oh, people are being killed. And now, of course, with, we're now complaining our civil liberties that are being abused during this COVID crisis with this lockdown where people are starving in their houses. And we have now become authoritarian and complaining, all rights this, all rights that. But I guess the question is, what has put Africa in this situation where we are no longer deserving of rights? Because you have to realize that for our rights to be abused, it's us ourselves abusing our rights. Because if you really believe in individual sovereignty, then there's no way your rights can be abused on your watch because you'd do something about it. But why can't you do anything about it? You can't do anything about it because you don't truly believe in your sovereignty as an individual. You do not. And the word belief has been misunderstood to mean sort of external acceptance. But the origin of the word belief means be life be, life to be. So it's more of action, how you act out life. For example, to believe in God is not just to say it out loud that, oh, I believe in Jesus, oh, I'm saved. Like how many preachers and really uninformed or ignorant religious leaders teach their flock. You know, to believe in God is to actually act out a life showing that you understand that God exists, and also to know where God exists, because people don't know where God exists. So again, they look at God as if he's something out there, forgetting that God is something in here. To see God, the creator of the universe, you have to look from within, and then from within you connect with the entire universe. and then you see God. You don't see God from looking out. Out is delusion. So, and even, Jesus and the devil, good and bad, all that is within you. So every time you don't accept Jesus, for example, you are accepting the devil. And every time you not accepting the devil, you are accepting Jesus. And if you don't choose between the two, then even the Bible calls you vomit because you're useless. What does this mean? This means that the whole world and what transpires in the world is at the core determined by the individual. So now let's take it back to Africa. This means that all the problems of Africa, including bad leadership, apeness, these colonialized minds, corruption, the wars, and our topic today, the abuse of human rights, is all determined by the individual. It's the individual's fault. It's your fault. It's my fault. It's the individual's fault. Excuse me. So when you see a bad leader out there in your country, you must very fast blame yourself first. You must understand that it's your fault that there's a bad leader. Because you're being irresponsible. And that's the only reason why you got such a leader. And it's not that leader's fault that is there. It's your irresponsibility. Because no one can just wake up and say, from today onwards, I'm the leader of this country. Power is not given. Power is taken. And to take power to a level of a national leader implies that the nation has allowed that leader to take that power. Otherwise, if you don't accept that leader to take that power, there's no way the leader would be there. If tomorrow I called a press conference and I announced that I'm a president, I'll be a laughing stock because I will have said the words, but you would not have given me the power. So all those bad leaders out there are our fault. And apeness has gotten you Africans or us Africans to think that the trust in the leader is a favor to us from the leaders, as if the leader is the sovereign, the state is the sovereign, and the individual is nothing. This is what's in our heads, and this is why we are not deserving of rights today. And again, why our rights are abused left and right. Because and this is apeness. I call this apeness because this is one of the colonial diseases. This is one of what came up after the death of the African spirit, because the African spirit was a subsistent spirit. It was very clear on individual sovereignty and what responsibility meant. In Africa, there was nothing like rights. Rights came out of responsibility. Rights are meant to protect you as a responsible citizen. to help you be responsible. It's like an enabler. It's like a vehicle. Rights rights is the fuel that drives responsibility. So to understand that today, instead of people talking about, fight for human responsibility, there's a fight for human rights, shows you again the reverse of what's supposed to be, what ought to be, and the madness, the insanity in our heads, where we put rights before responsibility. A simple lesson to Africa is that all these Europeans that you see out there, the Western world, and today they have capitalism that they are very happy with, even though they also have the East has communism and they are competing on what works. But all that has come from a lot of war, death, and suffering at the individual level to cause them to become responsible in accepting whatever economic system they have accepted. And their economic systems have already expressed in previous videos that they are exploitative. They're exploitative because both the East and West come from not having as much as Africa. And so colonialism was very important for the two. And trade is also very important for the two. Because for them they can't be self-reliant indeed, but then they would be if they could. And in fact today they've done a lot with capitalism to make themselves self-reliant through trade. But Africa that can be self-reliant without trade has instead become the exploited. But if we were educated well, we would understand that the answer to this problem begins at the individual level. What are you doing as an African to stop yourself or your future, your children and their future, from being exploited? This is how you regain individual sovereignty, because it's all about dialogue, and from dialogue we get education, and education is the only way to free yourself. Knowledge is how you empower yourself into sovereignty, and knowledge comes from dialogue. That's why free speech is one of the most important fundamental rights of any civilized entity. You know, could be the First Amendment in the US and even British common law. Free speech is very important. And today it has been abused in many ways, and so the right is infringed upon. But mostly the only infringements to free speech have been if you're screaming fire in a cinema, or you're using free speech to, again, infringe on other people's rights and responsibilities. Other than that, free speech has been very much respected. In Africa, free speech was very, very important as well, because free speech is how you empower the self. Free speech is how subsistence takes hold of a community. I've told you subsistence should be the primary economic activity of Africa, and each child should be raised self-reliant first before they can be introduced to capitalism and all these other things. Because before you're deserving of capital, before you're deserving of capital to change the world, you must be a sovereign individual. You must be a responsible person. Because if you're not a responsible person, then you don't deserve money. And that's why you see very many fake businesses and very many uh, really hopeless innovations coming up. You see our technology is backward. Yeah, I know we look at them and we think it's great, but we are really backward compared to where we are supposed to be if we had all been responsible. That's why you see the technology has turned out into privacy problems, data problems, AI. Now there's a new technology that is threatening, the health of human beings, or we believe so. All these problems uh, are coming up because we have forgotten our responsibility. So there's a lot of innovation and invention without responsibility. In the same way, for Africa, there's a lot of leadership without responsibility. So we have put leaders in power, we have trusted leaders to govern us out of naivety. Because frivolous, easy trust is trust out of naivety. It is stupid, it's ridiculous to trust anybody. Like, to trust, I trust you. Nobody should trust anybody because trusting is naivety. And if you trust and you're burnt by the trust, someone betrays you, then you become narcissistic. You become a narcissist, someone who thinks the world is out there to get them, and so they are the only ones that are better than anyone else. They are the only good, and that's worse. That's worse than being naive. You'd rather be naive than a narcissist, but the extremity, the extremes of being naive is becoming a narcissist, because to be naive is to not know. And if you don't know, you think what you know is what you need to know. Because any half-sane human being can't be comfortable not knowing, shouldn't be comfortable not knowing. So you become a narcissist. And that's a very terrible place to be. How we need to select our leaders should be out of courage. We should trust them out of courage. You know? We should empower them not because we are naive, but because we are courageous. And where do these leaders come from? The crop of leadership must understand that comes from us, the individuals. So if you raise poor quality individuals, non-sovereign individuals, then when you put them in power, they become entitled because they don't understand that the power is nested in the courageous trust of the individuals, and the individuals can take away the power in a second. That's why you see you have this entitlement and leaders become autocrats, once they are given all this power, the arms of power. And they forget that, their power is nested in the individual. And also, that's why us, the individuals, have allowed authoritarian autocracy to govern over us. That's why we have let dictators govern over us, because we don't understand our power. We have been mind controlled and manipulated to think the leader has power, and we don't have power. But it's the individual that governs the nation, not the leader. Because if we all sat down home, like how you see, one of the problems of the corona crisis is showing you that if you shut down the economy, all hell breaks loose. That's why you see every government kept these essential, organizations still working. Because they know us, if everything shuts down, well, there's no more state, there's no more country. The leaders need you for them to have even a country to govern. Otherwise, you will tell him, you leader, you're governing yourself now. We're now going to empower someone else to govern, because empowering is trusting. But there's a difference between trusting out of naivety and trusting out of courage. Trusting out of courage is we are all good enough to do right by the nation, but to make communication and workflow easy, we are trusting this person who is more competent slightly than all of us to rule us. But we shall share, because no one is 100% competent over everyone in everything. That's why hierarchies arise in society. And so we have to work together. And that's why you choose a leader and then you choose the parliament to again amalgamate different opinions from the different areas to create again sort of advisory board and a check to the leader, the executive. The executive is just the executor, by the way. The ideas come from the parliament. And then the judiciary to enforce, what has been agreed on by all of us. So even the judiciary is empowered by us, because we are the ones who determine what we need to be protected against by the judiciary, by the law that is made by the legislature and then enforced by the executive and judged by the judiciary. And so the reason why Africa continues to be in this dire state, or with this mentality of blaming leaders, is because we don't understand that it's our failure. So every time you get out there and you hear a person blaming a leader, pointing a finger, you're looking at a very irresponsible person. Because do something about it. You have to be able to do something about it. So again, the Kenrald Experience is focused on the future of Africa, African unity. So I tend to ignore the generations above the generations above the youth, because I feel like some of these are beyond salvation. They are gone. But then I have so much trust. I understand that the keys into the future are not with them anyway. The keys within the future are the youth, the youth leaders, the youth, and then the children of Africa. And I also told you that I'm a true believer in the human mind being the most advanced technology that will ever exist in this earthly universe, on the planet Earth. It's again the insanity that makes you think AI is smarter than human beings. AI can never be smarter than human beings. It's like saying you're smarter than God. We've had 1 billion years of existence before AI. So AI can never be smarter than human beings. It can never be smarter than human beings. It can process certain tasks we allow it to know about processing, but they can never replace a human being unless AI is not really a man-made thing, unless AI is really an alien that is controlling the earth and is from a different universe and has also lived for billions and billions of years, maybe even longer than humanity, and so is wiser on universal matters than the human, which is a bit far-fetched. Could be true, but it's a talk for another day. It's a bit far-fetched. But if you really believe that humanity is the most advanced species on Earth, and humanity is what's creating AI, then AI can never be smarter than humanity. It just defies the law, the laws of uh, of being, of existence. So how we invent the future? We invent the future through programming the children. So we need to program the children to be subsistent, sovereign individuals, to understand that we get the right to be their parents because we are doing right by them. And that's why it's important to let the children talk, to dialogue with the children and give them power, and to listen to them, and to guide them, but again let them breathe. Don't be a tyrant. And then don't be overprotective. That's for the mothers. Don't overprotect the child and cripple them. And for the fathers, don't over discipline. Don't be a tyrant and stop the child from breathing. Because the child is that middle ground, and you can either turn them into a hero or an adversary. Today, Africa is filled with adversaries. That's why you see our leaders are adversaries to the community, because we are adversaries to the community. We have ignored our responsibility, and so when we get the power, we are adversaries to the community. Because once you're an adversary, even the good things that you do end up being more hurtful. That's why I was telling you about the innovations of the world today being more hurtful than beneficial. Because they are targeting profits, they are targeting all the wrong things. Capitalism, it targets all profits as opposed to impact and true and changing human lives. And yet capitalism wants to come again and claim that it's because of capitalism that poverty has been eradicated. No, it's not because of capitalism, it's because Africa is waking up. Capitalism is the reason why Africa is poor, because capitalism found Africa rich. Africans have woken up and realized what's going on. You know, after you've suffered enough, you start being responsible. So what you're seeing is Africans becoming responsible again, and because of that, they're doing good by themselves. And that's why even the whole idea of Africans depending on, for example, the UN to police African duties. Man, if you knew the problems of human rights injustices in the West, you wouldn't want those people to be your police in Africa. But also, it's not the responsibility of the UN to police Africa. It's the responsibility of Africa to police Africa. Because only Africa knows what is deserving of rights in Africa. Who is sovereign enough that they deserve the fuel of rights to continue with the responsibilities that they carry on that are beneficial to themselves and then to Africa as a whole. Because I told you that at the end of the day, what you want with subsistence is that by taking care of your basic needs, you become less of a burden to others. And any extras from that responsibility is dispersed to others. To change the authoritarian leadership in Africa starts by changing yourselves from being authoritarian. And that's why in ancient Africa, you were meant to serve in the army, most especially for men, because this is how you earned sovereignty. But today, how many of you have served in the army? No one. And who is your biggest torturer? Who enforces all this authoritarian rule and on you? It's the army and the police. Why? Because they have guns. They're the only people responsible enough to be trusted with guns. By serving in the army, you give your life for the nation. And because you give your life for the nation rewards you by making you sovereign. And that's why that military budget is very important in Africa. These are the responsible people, and that's why you see they're the ones that maintain the power in Africa. So as we even talk about African unity, the first steps is we need to find a way of taking each and every African through military service. Each and every African has to give their life for Africa. And once you've given your life for Africa, then there's no way you'll be corrupted. I'll give you a very interesting story. The DRC, former Zaire, is is with no doubt the richest country on this earth. There is no country as endowed with wealth, natural wealth, like Zaire, like DRC. But DRC has never had peace. It has never had, okay, until maybe the recent politics. If I don't know if we investigated, we would find that. But until the new president, I don't think DRC has had a fair transition. When you fly over DRC, you will see all these mines. But DRC is one of the poorest countries on earth. Why does DRC remain poor? DRC remains poor because instead of trusting the individual to redeem DRC from the economic situation, DRC has trusted the European, the Westerner. And DRC being a French colony has trusted France. And we all know the relationship between France and its colonies in Africa is not good, most especially economically. So despite the UN peacekeeping force being in DRC for all this long, there is no place in Africa infested with rebels like DRC. These guys come and cut people's heads and massacre people. The villagers run away. Others are enslaved and forced to mine gold and diamonds. That definitely goes to the West because, like I said, the people are poor. The country is poor. And yet, there is active mining in the countries. If DRC had concentrated on individual sovereignty, on empowering the individual with knowledge, then no individual would accept a bribe over their nation, over their people. You would be patriotic, and anyone who tried to solicit or to elicit you into that madness, you would report to the authorities very quickly, or even do something about it as a responsible member of the community who loves the country. And these are important values for us not to forget as we set up this new Africa. And that's why I was telling you about that. Pan-Africanism. Through mandatory military service for mostly all these young kids that are going to be the Pan-Africans of the future. To understand these things. To understand the dangers of betraying the nation. Because all the rebel movements you see in Africa, all the suffering, all the chaos is caused by Africans. You don't see white people shooting in Africa anymore. They use you to shoot each other. Or you yourselves shoot each other. Because you're not responsible. You're corrupt. You're corrupted. Because you're blind. You're mind controlled into this violence against yourselves. And then you blame the government. Oh, government, we're insecure. Now we are getting into talking about these rights. So the right to security. Why should you deserve the right to security? You deserve the right to security if you, as the individual, are secure, have poses no insecurity to yourself and to others. But you need to really think about this. What does it mean that you pose no danger to yourself and to others? It means you're knowledgeable. It means you understand what it means to be a nation. And so you can't be bought. It means you're not corrupt, because security is also financial security. It means you're not nepotic, tribalistic, because you understand that security for others is also important. And so with that, you can't be enlisted into a rebel movement. And you can't be tricked into betraying the nation, because you understand that by betraying the nation, you're betraying yourself. Now, if you are that individual, then you're starting to be able to deserve rights. The right to security, that's it. That is. But more importantly, to deserve the right to security is to enable yourself to protect others. So, what does that mean? That means, obviously, to serve in the army. But if you can't serve in the army, then you have to support the army. And you support it with your life, which means respecting the army and respecting the police. So think about it. How many of us respect the army and the police? Or how many of us have served in the army? If the answer to that is none, then you can't again demand security, because you are an enemy to security. And so you also are corruptible. Because I told you, rights are just fuels to responsibility. If we are going to give you security, then you better be protecting others. That's in reference to security as a right. Now, serving in the army is one way to protect others, but also respecting and contributing to the army is also another way to provide security. And not being corrupt is another way to contributing to security. And all these have to work together to create a personality that you must have as a sovereign individual when it comes to matters of security. So as security came in first, but now we're going to start discussing rights. Let me try to do this as quick as possible. So the first right I would look at is the right to freedom. This is broad, and I want to talk about it first, because I'm going to talk about freedom and life first, because they are general. The right to freedom. To have the right to freedom means that as an individual, you're free also. You're not a slave. And because you're not a slave, you're able to know what's fair, what's just, and what's unfair. you have to have integrated the evil in you with the good in you, and in control of all that, to be able to produce fairness and meekness. You must be in control of all the evils within you, and then you deserve the fuel of freedom. Because we can't give you freedom to kill other people, we can't give you freedom to steal, we can't give you freedom to abuse people, we can't give you freedom to be evil. We can only give you freedom to be good, or you're only deserving of freedom if you're good, if you're not going to tarnish other people's names, if you're not going to, you know, if you're only going to do good. So you have to be an integrated person to deserve freedom. And that's why you see animals have not been given freedom, because animals have not showed potential to be good and not bad. And the little animals that have been good, the domesticated animals, or the domesticable animals, you can see they are living a better life than the wild animals. And that's just a natural, that has just manifested itself naturally. So to deserve of the right of freedom, you must be good. If you're a Christian, you say you must have accepted Jesus. If you're Jewish, you must have accepted the teachings of Moses and the other prophets. If you are Muslim, Muhammad. If you're African traditional, Maat, you must be good and accountable. That's the first right. The second right is the right to life. That's another fundamental right. I told you I'll start with freedom and life. The right to life. Why should you live? Why should you not be killed? Why should you live? You should live because you're useful to yourself, which means you're not a burden. You're useful to yourself and you're useful to others. This is the true reason why you deserve a right to life. And the right to life comes with responsibility, because life doesn't come from anywhere else. Life is made. Children are made, for example. And so even the question of abortion, that's why it becomes a very tricky situation, because it's now a question of the rights of the baby in the stomach, the rights of the fetus. Why does the fetus deserve to live? The fetus deserves to live because, first of all, they are a human being and they have potential to be useful to themselves and to others. So by aborting, you're denying the world a potential savior, a potential, actually, an obvious savior, because once you're born, you're already a savior, you're already a winner, but a potential leader. But the women who advocate for the right to abortion advocate for that right because they think that the new life is going to cause more harm than good. The new life is not useful. That's why they want the right to take care of it. And I think this is why this is the what the conservatives and the liberals, or the left and the right, has failed to agree. The issue of abortion has two issues. The first right is the right to life, and that's for the baby. The right to have the baby or not to have the baby is not a right, because the right to being a parent is based on ability to take care of the baby. You deserve to be a parent because you're responsible enough to take care of the baby. Now, should you get pregnant before, then you don't deserve to have the baby. But again, now the life has been formed, and that's now another independent individual. So much as you have abused your own right to be a parent by not being responsible enough when you got pregnant, the right for that life to live is solely dependent on the life itself being useful to the world. And this is very important, by the way. So the only time when I believe a pregnancy should be terminated is if the baby in their during the pregnancy is making the life of the mother, is putting the life of the mother at danger. If you being pregnant is going to kill you as the mother, that's the only time when we might say you have a right to terminate the pregnancy. Only if the pregnancy endangers your life. And also that comes down to how responsible are you. And these are tough things, but this is responsibility one on one, and comes from African culture. Because what makes you think that you have power to kill the baby? That arrogance that makes you ask for the choice to be able to kill the baby, or anything like that, should be the same question you should ask yourself. What gives you the right to do that? What gives you the right to do that is only if that baby being in your stomach will kill you. If it will not kill you, then you have no right to kill that baby. Now, whether you can take care of the baby or not, you abuse that right by getting pregnant. Because we're no longer living in a world where people get pregnant by mistake. If that happens, it's just because you're irresponsible. Because there are pills now. There are so many ways to avoid getting pregnant. So if you get pregnant because of irresponsibility, then we can't punish the new life for your irresponsibility. You're the one to be punished for your irresponsibility, because now you're forced into responsibility. You have to take care of that baby. And we shall come with the baby's rights as a child, children rights. Because that baby is now in child rights arrangement. So pro-life, all the rights around life are all centered around those easy questions. I start with the baby, but then as you grow up, again, it's about usefulness to yourself and to others. If you're useful to yourself and others, then you deserve to live. And if you're not useful to yourself and to others, then really you become useless. And I can't say that then you should be killed, But I can say then you should go back to school. You should think about subsistence, about empowering yourself so that you deserve the right to live. So if you think you've not been useful to yourself and others, this is kind of a wake up call for you to go and educate yourself and empower yourself to be useful to yourself, at least, so that you're not a burden to others. And if, and even more, be useful to others. Because when you become useful to others, then you become a leader. Because life is suffering. Life is not happiness. That's a very shallow way of thinking about life. Life is suffering. That's why, after Adam and Eve were chased from the garden, they were sent into a world of suffering. There is no escaping suffering. They were not sent into paradise. They would deserve paradise if they are able to show that they've integrated themselves back into good. Then they will resurrect into paradise. They will go back to Eden. But if you've not integrated the evil in you, the good and bad that you discovered by eating the forbidden fruit, if you have not integrated that, then you won't see paradise. You will live in hell, die in hell for eternity. To see paradise, you have to resurrect. So life is suffering, which means that life is a more profound problem. Life is troublesome. Life is the mistakes of getting pregnant without intending to. Life is all that. And how you contend with that is through ethical responsibility. And that ethical responsibility is the usefulness I'm talking about. And subsistence is the useful to self, providing for self, empowering self with knowledge, and doing stuff for self so that you're self-reliant and not a burden to anyone in the world. And because of that, you shine a light to others. This sovereignty is dispersed to others because God is omnipresent. So then through you, you shine a light on others. And if we are all sovereign, then we live in a heaven because we live in a responsible world, a useful world where everyone is useful to self and others. And this is the paradise that we are moving towards. This is the definite aim of life, the purpose of living. And once you understand that, then you understand the fuel, where that fuel is driving us, the fuel of right to life. And if you're not playing that game, then you're a disservice to those people playing that game. You're the people taking us behind from going to heaven. So we can't kill you, just like you can't kill a baby because you can't determine if it will be good or bad. But what we're trying to say is that if you're not useful to self, you're really not deserving of life. So you better make yourself deserving of life. You better get your act together because you're still a baby. You're an adult infant. And you're only surviving because you have potential. Otherwise, you don't deserve to even live. And this is the problem with where many of us are. We are there, potential, potential, potential. And we never educate ourselves enough to now become sovereign. And all these cries that you see are infants crying. You can't do shit about it, but you're crying. This leader is bad. This leader is bad. Only the few sovereign can do anything about it, and that's the army. And when you see the army siding with the leader, it's maybe because the leader is doing something good that you, the infants, can't see. And that's why they beat you up like infants, force you into houses. I'm sure no essential worker is being forced into a house. If you are being forced into a house, then think about what you're doing and how essential it is, and maybe pick up more essential work. Because I know the farmers are allowed to work, the markets are open, so the farmers who are dealing in food are working. You know, the only jobs that are being forced into the house are jobs that are really not defined as essential. The army is out working, the restaurants are being allowed to operate, the hospitals are working, the teachers are working because, to be a teacher is not to be out there with a chalk in class. To be a teacher, you don't need to have a chalk. Not in this world. I believe right now I'm teaching. So teachers should be out there empowering people. In fact, the teacher's job is the most important job, the most essential of all. And the reason why you see teachers have not been called out is because each and every one of us is meant to be a teacher. But become a teacher by being sovereign, by first of all cleaning your own house. And once you've cleaned your own house, then you can clean other houses. And if our teachers are not being allowed out, then it should tell you about the quality of teachers we have. Because those essential people, professionals out there, should be the teachers. If you're learning medicine, then the doctors should be the teacher to teach you medicine. The pharmacist should be the teacher to teach you pharmacology. The physician should be the teacher to teach you physiology. The lawyer should be the teacher to teach you law. But to be a teacher, a master of everything, and you don't know anything, that's the wrong teacher. That's the responsibility of everyone. And this is why Africa needs to examine what we call teachers. Because in Africa, most of the time, the failures are the ones made teachers. So how can a failure be a teacher? We need people who have excelled to be teachers, not the failures. The ones that fail to make it to university are the ones that go to teaching colleges and become primary teachers. So what are we teaching our children? Failures are teaching our children. That's why we're having infant adults that are not responsible, that don't understand the fundamentals of the sovereignty that is required, to run Africa. Okay, let's go to the next right. The next right is the right to food. Why do you deserve food? During the COVID crisis, they've locked us in our houses, our families are starving. But why are our families starving? It's not like they lock us in the house all day. There's a curfew, you can walk. There's a curfew, you can walk to the market. That means you can walk to the farm. So you deserve a right to food if you're producing food. The reason why you're starving is because you don't produce food. Because if you produce food, you would now be going to your store, picking up food to your farm and harvesting food. So for you to say, oh, we need a right to feed, then you must produce. So this is also a wake-up call. The right to food is given to you because you're a producer. If you don't produce anything, you don't deserve to eat. That's why God said that, the man shall have to work to feed. You'll have to sweat to feed. Even God told you that you would only eat after hard work. You would deserve to eat because you've worked hard. So if you say we have a right to have food, then you have to produce. And if you don't produce, you don't deserve to eat. If you don't work, you don't deserve to eat. The other right is the right to health. All these are human rights, the right to health. Why do you deserve good health? Why should you tell the government, oh, we have no hospitals, we are sick, we are suffering, we are dying? You deserve a right to health Because first of all, you're doing everything to make sure you're healthy. You're eating safe food. That means a balanced diet. You're boiling your water. I mean, fire was invented millions of years before this civilization, so you can't say you need government to help you boil your water. And the well water can be boiled to be safe. So you don't need piped water to boil water. Africa has lived for billions of years without piped water. A balanced diet means you're producing. You're going out there to find a balanced diet. You're researching food to know what food is good for Africans and what food is not good for Africans. And then, most importantly, you're exercising. Exercising, that means you're working, you're engaged in working, you're doing exercises, you're keeping yourself physically fit. Again, that's why serving in the army is very important, because you get to do that by default. But then that's the physical aspects of health, of good health, responsible health, but also making friends, engaging with the community, being good to self and others, dialogue, encouraging free speech, and being involved into the issues, being involved in the dialogue of the issues that run your country. Many Africans, you don't know the national anthem, you don't know you don't know anything about the nation, you don't know anything, you don't know what's going on about colonialism, you're just in aptness, you don't understand what religion means, you don't know what God you worship, you just worship because your parents told you this. The parents don't know, adults are infants. It's just not healthy. And so if at the individual level you're not healthy, then you can't say you deserve a right to health. You don't even know what health is. Finally, on the issue of the right to health, also you need to be out there discovering new medicines, new ways to make you healthy. It should be every single African's responsibility to see how to better life, how to make life easier and better. And that's medicine. Medicine is not the pills you pop only. It's about a new exercise, a new yoga, a new a new way to be healthier, a new way to live longer. Researching why our grandparents lived longer and today people die earlier. You know, helping out those that are unable to help themselves. Bathing the kids, teaching them to wash their hands, taking a bath every day. Understanding the relationship between, there's water therapy, understanding the relationship between all that, why water is important, taking water every day, and teaching the kids those same values. Once you do that, once you keep yourself healthy, and you do all the other things we talked about, then you deserve the right to health. But if you're not keeping yourself healthy, you can't say you deserve a right to health. You can't go and try to commit suicide and then you say you deserve the right to health. Because that's detrimental to society. It's not useful to society. The right to health is the same as the right to education. And education is I think the most important right of all. You deserve a right to education. Why should you deserve a right to education? Because it's only through education that you can live. It's only through education that you can be useful to self and to others. And the right to education is attached to the right to life. If they don't give you education, they've given you no life. And so by colonialism taking away education, it took away life. And that's why the Kenrald Experience is dedicated to fighting aptness, to fighting that evil mentality that keeps you uneducated, that keeps you insane. Because we understand that by keeping you uneducated, we deny you life. All African problems are because you're not educated. And what I'm doing here is I'm educating you, and I'm hoping that I also am learning something on the journey as well. And that's why I encourage you to join us in the commentary and teach what you think I've missed out, I've not learned. So you deserve a right to education because we expect you to teach. And to teach, you must be a sovereign individual. You must be knowledgeable enough to teach. That's why teaching should be for professionals, for the elderly wise. That's why the elders were the ones that talked at the fireplace in Africa. And if you see babies, a young baby looks at, let's say, 1 year old looks at the 2 year old to teach them, and there's little learning there. But really, a 3 year old will teach a 2 year old, and a 3 year old will look at a 4 year old, and a 4 year old will look at a 5 year old. We all have a tendency to like to make friends that are smarter than us, because that's how you grow. And you can tell when you make friends that are below your level of understanding, because they hate you and there's conflict. They're the ones that will hate you, and the haters come from you friends that are below your level, and so they see you as a threat. And if you're being threatened by someone, then you need to educate yourself more. That's why if you blame a leader, then you need to empower yourself more with knowledge, so that you know what to do about the situation. Otherwise, you're just a hater. Someone is doing something you can't do, and instead of you educating yourself about it, instead you're making all this noise. You're speaking in spite against them. We hate police and armies, but none of us wants to do the responsibility of giving our lives to protect the nation. You're there, oh, you're army person, you're there to protect us. He's not there to protect you. He's there to protect sovereign individuals. And that is very easily his fellow soldiers. So he's there to protect his fellow soldiers. And once you start throwing stones, then he's going to attack you. You're the enemy, not the soldiers. Because these to him are responsible people who have given their lives to the nation. There's a brotherhood here. You're the alien. But if we were all soldiers, then they wouldn't attack us, because we would all be brothers. And would understand each other, and then would discuss issues. Would dialogue. So education is the biggest of all. Everything I'm going to cover and I've covered before is all education, and education is the most fundamental right. It's the same as the right to freedom and the right to life. It's the very fundamental right. And from the day you're born, you're learning, which means it's a God-given right. And education has two problems. One is access, and the other one is quality. And this is now the right. This is where the rights come in, because education otherwise is just so fundamental. So even gets deeper to access and rights. So yeah, you have a demand, you have a right to quality education. But how do you get quality education? How are you able to know you're not getting quality education? You know you're not getting quality education because you've done everything to learn all the good that you can do within your knowledge and your boundaries. You've explored, or you've looked at the whole of Africa, and you've learned all you can learn about Africa. That's when you say, okay, now I deserve better knowledge. But you can't say you don't know you've never planted a tree, and now you want knowledge on how to make a desk. You want knowledge on cutting down trees before you've even learned how to grow a tree. That's why Africa shouldn't rush into wanting, the knowledge of the West. We need to first understand the knowledge of Africa. We need to know our history, our background, our economics, what's good for Africa. Then after knowing that, we shall know, okay, maybe we can use pipe water. And then we can learn about that. Maybe we can use a faster car, and maybe it needs to be also a self-drive car. Then we can, develop that for ourselves. And normally, if you're really educated, full circle, then you don't even need to get Elon's Tesla. You can create your own self-drive car. Very different, maybe that, runs on a very different engine. Because that evolution of the engine also came from a different type of technology. And and if you use your imagination, maybe there's another car that can run on another thing. Elon Musk is making a car that runs on a battery. So you know what can come from Africa. God gave you a horse. God gave you legs. That's a different car that runs on the brain or on the joints. So when you think there are many other ways to invent new things, and this is where it comes from when it's true knowledge. We can go on days and days about the right of education. The access to education, that's simple. Yeah, we need schools, we need temples, and it's our role to build these schools. That again goes to the right to, say, infrastructure. You shouldn't wait for the government to build infrastructure. In Africa, our culture wasn't to wait for government to build you a good house, to find you land. You served the community and got land. You served the army and got land. You inherited land and you built your house. By 16, you had built your house. You're already out of your father's house, being independent, starting to look at girls, village girls. Today, we have 30-year-olds that are still in their father's houses with no plan to live. Sometimes life hits you and you might fall back to family. That's what family is there for. But you have to have a plan to live. Because our standard should be by 16, you're independent. This is the true original African standard. In fact, it was younger than 16. Today, the African standard has died. Is that progress? No, that's not progress. That's because you're babies. You can't believe today, even the African presidents, the age limit is 35 for most countries. So these youth leaders are not allowed to lead. Well, there's a fair argument that they are not educated enough, but at least they should be contending in all these other different power positions. But if you're not even allowed to talk at home, how are you going to be a village leader, let alone a president? You don't have that training because the adults are also infants that are also happy to have some little power because they don't have the true power. They've left the colonizers to run Africa. The West still runs Africa, and it runs Africa for Western interests. If the West is the one funding our education, it's the one funding our healthcare, it's the one funding the AU, the African Union, our organizations, the one funding peace processes, why do you think it would do things in African interests? If I'm funding a UN peace mission and I can mine diamonds in Congo, I'll do that. Africa needs to take responsibility of these things. And you can't say you don't have money. Money is value and you have values. So create something that you can use to exchange value and get people to work. Create your own money, African money. And you don't have to sell it to the Europeans. We can use it in Africa. And once we know it's strong enough, then we can open it up to the Europeans. And this needs to happen like now. Why don't you have your money? And this all comes full circle with the right to infrastructure. If you don't have schools, build the schools. You who is asking for a school, have you ever held a brick and said, let me build a school? Have you donated land? Do you teach anyone? What have you done to deserve the right to education? That's access. How have you empowered yourself to be able to teach the community? Are you going back to schools and teaching people, the younger people? Do you have something of value to teach? Because you can't say we deserve a right to education. What makes you think you're not getting educated? The fact that you know about the right to education means someone is doing their job right. So you're getting educated. You just don't know what education is or means. But if we enter quality, then again, have you done enough to learn everything around you for you to judge that it's bad quality? Because you have to be a good judge of these things before you can ask for more. But like I said, education is such a big topic, and it's really big. So the right to entertainment, yeah, you deserve a right to entertainment, but are you entertaining? Yeah, at the individual level, are you entertaining? If you're not entertaining at the individual level, then you know what do you mean you deserve a right to entertainment? You don't know what entertainment means. And what is entertainment? What is entertainment? Entertainment is a form of education. You can't teach people immorality and call that entertainment. You don't have a right to spread immorality in Africa. No. African entertainment wasn't about immorality. Our past entertainment, the drums and everything, was innovation in music. And music would speak to the soul. And so you have to understand that language to the soul. And then you can demand entertainment because you know what you're seeking out of the entertainment. Do you know how to make a drum, a good drum? Do you know how to make an instrument? Do you know how to play an instrument? Do you know how to tell a nice story? Do you know how to teach? That's when you're able to know what good entertainment is and then say, I deserve entertainment. But you can't call immorality entertainment and say, I deserve entertainment. No, not in Africa. Usefulness to self and to society. Responsibility with everything. This is what makes you a sovereign individual that deserves entertainment. Useful entertainment. Like sports. Because we play games from the day we are born. And games teach. They teach competition. They teach acceptance of loss without violence. They teach dialogue. Which I told you is the First Amendment is a very powerful tool. Let's look at more rights. A right to gender. Now, sexuality is an amalgamation of nature and culture. So it has both an objective and a subjective element. That's sexuality. The gender aspect of the natural aspect of sexuality is sex. You're a man or you're a woman. The subjective, the cultural aspect of it is gender. Now, gender is where the trans come in, and you know all these other things that have been spread out by social justice. Now, the right for you to be trans means you accepting everybody else to be what they are. And so to say that I'm going to be trans means that you're excluding yourself from anything that is strictly for men and anything that is strictly for women. So we can't have you, a trans person, again compete in feminine sports. No, if you're trans, say, former man that became a woman. Former man that became a woman. Yeah, you can't compete with our women. It's unfair. And hormones don't make it fair. Same thing if you're a trans man that was a woman. You can't you know, can't compete in these other sports because clearly you're a different gender and you've determined so. So you need to, again, what are you doing for the trans community? Are you creating a trans sport? Because becoming trans is okay. You have a right to gender. The problem is once when you start influencing the world to give you rights to other things, then you have to create those things yourself. Because the women created women in sports. They created sports for women. And the men created sports for men. So the transgenders need to create sports for the transgenders. And all the other genders. I'm using those because they are the three clear separations. I thought about it. But maybe, but I know there are more. I'm not ignorant of that, So before the social justice warriors come to attack me, you know. But you have to understand the responsibility that comes with you. Gender is fluid. And so because it's fluid, yeah, you have a right to call yourself whatever you want to call yourself. But you have to understand that um, nature runs how the majority of the world sees things. We don't see you, when we don't see your gender, we see your sex. And you have to be comfortable enough, you know, and secure enough to know the difference between your sex and your gender. And the gender is a subjective thing, it's how you feel. It doesn't have to be how you are. That's gender. But sex is how you are. And no one should be forced to know how you feel because it's hard to know how someone feels. I might look like a man, but I feel like a woman. That I'm not going to sue people because they've called me a man. I'm going to educate them that, oh, you're calling me a man, but I would like to be seen as a woman. And hopefully they will call me a woman. But if they made the mistake, hey, the sex is a man. And it's the true sex. And if I'm a woman and I feel like a man, I'm not going to sue people. That's why this pronoun argument is also, and compelled speech argument is also, trivial. You know, those are fluid things. You deserve a right to feel how you want to feel about yourself. But that's a personal thing. But to impose it onto others can't be compelled because nature is nature. And nature creates men and women. And the hermaphrodites that are natural transgenders anyway. But you see, even hermaphrodites have a superior sex that they change, and their name is hermaphrodites, not transgenders. They are hermaphrodites or pronunciation. And there's a way we treat hermaphrodites with respect. Most of the time, they choose one of the genders they prefer, and I'm sure you've not had any hermaphrodite being called a different gender than the one they prefer, than the one they really take up when they're young. So your right to gender, you have it, but again, you don't have right to to influence others into that. The right to sex is more fundamental. The right to leadership. For you to deserve a good leader, you need to be a responsible citizen. You need to be a good leader. The right to, let's say, to vote comes from us believing that we can trust you with that mantle. You're knowledgeable enough to make a good decision. You're holding the steering wheel of state, and so you can drive us toward the right direction with your vote. And this is why you have a right to vote, the right to an election, the right to a good leader. These things are all together. The right to a non-corrupt society is because you're not corrupt yourself. These things all come together, you know. The right to employment. Are you subsistent? Are you farming? Do you have a skill? Have you taught yourself a skill? Are you helping the community? And as the community run out of problems, that now you deserve a specific job. And that's why, again, the question of money needs to be re-examined, because money is what makes you lazy. Money is what destroys African ethic of responsibility to work. Because people look at reward more than they look at the actual skill set and the usefulness of the skill set to themselves and others. Subsistence has been killed by commercialization. And this is why we fight capitalism. Because it kills that responsibility to work. That's why people are saying right to employment, no jobs. How can there be no jobs with all the problems in Africa? There are jobs, but you're looking for jobs that can get you money. And that's something that you, as an individual, you have to look at. African society has to look at. Is money that important to you? We need to quickly say, fuck money. Let's get to real work. Work for self, service for self, above and beyond money. And if we really need money, then we create an African currency that values our work the African way, not letting the white man to determine what's valuable to us and for us. Because money is only pumped into things that serve the white man, not things that serve Africa. So the right to employment is a very deep right and needs you to really be woke to think about it. So the right to democracy, that's easy. The right to democracy means that we believe that the majority of the people will make the right decision. But we know that common knowledge doesn't teach us that. Most of the time, the 1% are the intelligent ones, and the majority are not the intelligent. So I don't think even the European democracy is good for Africa. For Africa, we had a few. The Council of Elders, the Grand Masters that governed Africa, Al-Kebulan, because they were educated for 42 years in Egypt. And so we trusted them to make the right decision. African democracy shouldn't be about numbers that the whole nation voted. We should all keep ourselves in education, and those that excel at the education should make our decisions. Yes, out of competence. Competence wins and should win and should run this world. Competence. And no one stops you from being competent. And competence, education in the competence school should be totally free, totally out of excellence. If people excel, we need to support them to excel even more in all fields, because they are our leaders. Because the leader should be the most competent of all of us all. And so democracy needs to also be re-examined. I don't think democracy is good for Africa. The democracy that has been sold in Africa. Democracy is about the most competent leading, not the majority, because the majority don't always make the right decision. That's why you have mob justice, where they kill people. The majority kill people. Bad decision without justice. So I'll end with those. We will always go into different rights, and the more you engage, the more you tell me about other rights to talk about. So finally, as we wrap up this human rights question, Africa needs to stop depending on the United Nations to police African rights. And it's about, because no one knows what human rights are important in Africa or for Africans except us, the Africans. Because all these human rights, the education, the what? We know what education is good. You know what education these white men are pushing for in Africa. And you know where it has taken us. You know what healthcare they are pushing for? Aid is what they're using to push this. Now, if our education, our healthcare is dependent on charity, you think that's good education? If our economics, our commerce is being pushed by Western currency, is that good commerce? Is that fair commerce? And these are the responsibilities, these are the rights they are pushing for, that they tell you have a right to. And they're stopping African leaders that are fighting for you from doing things that are good for Africa. So you have to think about all that. These all UN rights and responsibilities that you see that you want them to inter really interfere with African progress, using those excuses. They use fancy words like, policy dialogue, that they come that they they deny the conditionality link between their loans and grants to Africa, but it's there. They say we talk to our partners and we hope. But the more you cry out, oh, help us, you see every opposition leader running to the West for help and things like that. That shows ignorance. That shows a baby running to the mother to cry. It's pathetic. It's a very pathological way of understanding life and sovereignty, individual sovereignty. If a leader is doing something wrong, you need to report him to the individuals, to the people, by teaching the people the wrong that he's doing and letting the people determine if it's wrong, and if it is, the people will have the power to do something about it. And you don't have to drive the people to act now because of you, an individual's burning challenge. You again have to accept the individual to work in their time. But believe you me, the way this world operates, nothing done in the dark remains in the dark forever. One day it will come to the light. All these leaders will be held accountable by the individual, not by the Western powers. The responsibility that you talk about have been put in that UN whatever policy, whatever, by Africans, because there's no race that has suffered more. Yeah, they've had sufferings and here and there, but no race has suffered as the black race. So all these rights that you see, no one understands the fundamentals of what's important as a right than an African. So if you really need anyone to police, it needs to be the African individual who comes from this history of real evil. And we also have to understand that this evil is innate in all of us. We are very evil. And because we are innately evil, the burdens of the world are our responsibility and our fault. So it's up to us to fix these burdens. It's our responsibility to fix them. So I'm running out of time. We can always pick this up on the next talk. But what I can say is, before you blame anybody else, blame yourself. Because all the evil that you see out there is your fault. So start today to become a sovereign individual who is in charge of the destiny of the world. What are your values? Find values to aim at. Put your house in order. Are you setting yourself right? Do you deserve the human rights? And once you deserve them, more power to you. And believe you me, you will receive them. The UN won't save Africa. The African individual has always saved Africa, is saving Africa, and will continue to save Africa. The power is in each and every individual's hands, your hands. Be blessed. And thank you guys for joining me. If you haven't subscribed to the Kenrald Experience, again, please subscribe. If you like the video, hit the like button. That will be helpful to support us. Invite a friend to the Kenrald Experience where we talk about this and engage in the comments so that we can get back to you and know what issues we can talk about and what to learn from you. Thank you guys once again. Looking forward for the unity of Africa. Thank you.